Of course, Dr. McManus is in to talk about the Black Health Coalition losing their funding from it basically is the government, federal government.
Federal
right?
government,
federal
yes.
government. They took
Maternal
their
Child
money.
Bureau of
Yeah,
the federal
they just
government.
took the money,
Yes.
just took the
Well, they arranged things because they decided that what the model they want is larger. Like I said, they believe very much in medical schools and universities and other organizations and one thing about Milwaukee up until OIC was gone, we don't have any organizations like that that's run in our community, African American community. We don't have those. At least Chicago, these other places, they got big organizations, but it didn't mean that we weren't doing our work. And the level we applied for was just for our clients. Show that you could, and we had that data. We had evaluation data, so they can't say we didn't have that. But that's not where they wanted the money to go.
And unless I'm misunderstanding, usually funders talk about how they want things to look ahead of time. They don't just change in midstream and say, okay, this is what we want, this is the way it should look, and so we're only going to fund it.
Right.
Normally, especially because collaboration and partnership has become this really big thing now. So to hear you say that out of the clear blue, they're changing the rules of the game, that they are expecting more, they want more, but it's eliminating people that would normally be the players.
That's right.
And the thing that gets me too is the fact that for Milwaukee, we don't have a lot of advocacy for the people, like you were describing. There's not a lot of advocacy for those
absolutely.
people. So what will they expect to happen in the future for these people if
they expect these large agencies, as you say, to do this? I mean, you're right in terms of they expect that. Now, we were told that Dr. Trosh was brought in to do a 3.0 Healthy Start, but we didn't get the specifics until we saw the request for applicants, the funding opportunity, as they call it. The funding opportunity, we didn't see it till then. It wasn't like they came in even a year ago and said, this is what we're going to be looking at. We need you guys to move into that direction. They didn't do any of that. And so, but it was clearly meant to get rid of some of the Healthy Start organizations. There was no doubt about that, because they didn't do that. They didn't work with our Healthy Start Association. They didn't do it like they're doing with some of the other folks. They didn't do any of that. And again, his disdain for Healthy Start was, one of the first things he said, Healthy Start kind of had this thing like, if you've seen one Healthy Start, you've seen one Healthy Start, because they are so local that they do look very different depending on how they're put together. When we all had criteria, we all had things we had to meet, which we did. But he didn't want that. They want evidence-based. So somebody can write something, get it published, and that's evidence. And so we're in trouble with that. I want to make sure I get these numbers.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, we've got somebody on the caller, but before we take that call, we're going to give out these numbers. Yes.
Right, so this is the Healthy Start program, and the person there are two people you can call, Michael Liu, L-U, that's how you spell his last name, and his number is 301-443-9727. That's 301-443-9727. And then Dr. Hani Atrash, A-T-R-A-S-H, Hani, H-A-N-I. He's actually over Healthy Start. Michael Liu is over the department that runs Healthy Start. His number is 301-443-0543.
And we'll give those numbers once again at the end.
And also, let me give you our number, because we are going to have a little, for people who want to know exactly what they should say, please call us, and we'll send this to you, give the information. But our number is 933-0064. That's 933-0064. And what we really want people to say is that they should adhere to the grant proposal they put out there, and they should fund any Healthy Start application that was approved for round one should be funded.
Okay. All right, we can take our caller now. Caller, you're on the line.
Yes. Good morning, Farley, Bert, Deborah. How's everybody doing?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, and Dr. McManus?
Yes, how are you?
JT, I just want to say thank you so very much for over the last 30 or some odd years. You have always been there strong for the community, always told it like it was, what's happening with poor black people. I've been noticing there's been some kind of like converter effort. As you can say, it's probably federal or something, but even in the state, they've been trying to take away black programs that was effective helping helping poor black people. And they probably didn't like the monies and the funds that you was getting. You helping black people too much or something like that. But excuse me, it sounds like some type of conspiracy because, as I said earlier, Polly, you know, we had CYD, OIC, and now they're messing with Dr. McManus. I can hear from her heart and from her soul that she's hurt by this. That she did everything she thought right over the last 20 years, Polly, to take care of poor black people. Didn't have nothing, didn't have nowhere to go, and they helped them with that. Families, everything. So I don't know. I may be way out there, but it just seems like to me that it's trying to take away everything black people died for, suffered for, and everything like that, and trying to kick us to the curb and put more of our kids into prisons and make them happy and full and fat. So, Dr. McManus, I just want to say, excuse my ranting.
No, that's okay. I appreciate
it. I
appreciate
just want to say I'm so very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your tenacity and your strength and telling the truth about it. Anything that the community can do here in the state of Wisconsin, it can help support your organization. I know you gave out some information earlier, things like that, Dr. McManus.
Thank you. And we're going to be around.
Anything else you think we can do to help, please share that with us. And thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Polly. Thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome, JT. And I think, JT, you're onto something that I've always stressed, and that is that we have institutions that have inherent racism in them, but the people who administer those institutions would deny that.
Absolutely.
They would argue, and particularly on the right-wing side, is that all they're doing is trying to create efficiency and trying to get the taxpayer the benefit of the dollar they're spending. But they're also forgetting that the African-American community is on a negative end of so many statistics for a reason. And the reason is that the money being spent is not staying in the African-American community. It's not being delivered to or staying in that community. And off air, I asked Dr. McManus, or I shared with Dr. McManus, my observation of the fact that SDC had lost its grant and that Next Door Foundation had picked up a large part of it. And if you go and look at the Next Door Foundation Board of Directors, and if you can get your hands on any portion of their staff, their staffing, the majority of folks, not the majority, the overwhelming majority of folks I'm talking about are white. But that's a Head Start agency that is supposedly educating and delivering to black kids. But if we don't have economic opportunity for black people who get the education and get the degrees, then what are we trying to do? We don't seem to want to come to grips with that either sometimes, because we want to say that our child made it through or somebody else's child made it through. Anecdotally, I can talk about success on individuals' terms. We can't, as a group, talk about success, and that's what I'm shooting for.
But one of the questions, though, Kurt, and this is the thing that really upsets me about Milwaukee, is that we don't have enough power with our leadership to be able to leverage things. I mean, we've got all these individuals who people want to name drop in all these different places, but I just don't feel that we're coming together, that we could come behind an issue like Dr. McManus's issue and be able to leverage it with the leadership that we have in place, whether it's legislator, whether it's people who have a little money, any of these things.
Well, one of the things, Deborah, I'm running into and I've spoken to it on this station, is that in fact we're educating a lot of our young black people. However, they think that since they've made it and they get accepted into an institutional setting where they are the only one of two or the only black person, that in fact that has solved the problem. It's almost like, white folks will say that, well, we've got a black president, so racism doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
We've got black people in positions of influence, if not power, that will feel the same way and not look at the bottom line, and that is how much is the black community getting out of this, especially in economic terms. See, we'll say that this group being serviced is black, but who is the money spent with, and where do they take the money?
Right.
And we don't want to
jobs
answer that.
is tied into that.
Where are the jobs that are supposed to come to our community to help ameliorate the economic disadvantage we're in?
Okay. So then, where is the disconnect between that generation of black people that understood this and that were teaching one generation to the next, and we wanted our kids to go to school, get a degree, so they could turn around and help? Well, yes, the expectation is that you will get something, you will benefit, your life will be better, but at the same time, you will look back and you will want to help your community.
It kind of reminds me, and this is something that happened many years ago and may still be occurring. When Schlitz Brewing Company was recruiting African Americans for their professional positions back in the 1970s, an interesting pattern was observed, and that was they would bring them into Milwaukee from out of town. Now Schlitz headquarters is on technically 3rd and Walnut. They would bring them in, take them to headquarters, and if the person accepted and started looking for a house, they did not show them houses in the city of Milwaukee.
Right.
They would take them to the suburbs and show them houses.
That's right.
And that was an interesting contradiction, because the suburbs at that time didn't want black folks in the suburbs, but Schlitz was trying to put them there because Schlitz had this jaundiced view of the black community in Milwaukee. Now, I remember when Henry Aaron lived up here on Capitol Drive. Henry felt he was fine on Capitol Drive. But some folks were trying to convince him that you really don't want to live on Capitol Drive because that's in the city. That's off the black community. You want to live in Brookfield, or you want to live in Mequon. And so we end up with these contradictions, and how do we solve them? Because on one hand, the striving is to bring black people where they can afford to go anywhere and do anything. On the other hand, we end up with people making decisions that are adverse to the black community if they don't, in fact, understand the black community.
And one of the things, too, that's unique about Milwaukee, which I've learned from doing my own research, was just from talking to other people, is that, the reason Milwaukee is number one in segregation as a city. As I said, apparently New York is the most segregated state, but Milwaukee's most segregated city, is because we do not have, and it made me think when Kurt was talking, we do not have a black suburb. Because most every place else, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Washington, whether it's Baltimore, wherever, Atlanta. So if you do well and you want to live in a better place, you're able to do that, but you still have a black constituents of folks,
Right.
that you can do that with. You don't have that here in Milwaukee. They've never been able to get to that point. Part of it, from what Kurt's saying, that they didn't want them out there, a lot of that still hasn't changed in terms of how things are done. But we also are complacent with, and this is part of what Kurt's bringing up too, we're complacent with white people taking care of us, quote unquote.
Oh, you shouldn't have said that.
Well, it's the plantation.
You
I'm talking about this. Milwaukee's one of the best plantations I've ever seen. And you get well-meaning white people who want to help, but something about giving black people money, they want to give to other white folks and other white organizations. And it moves there. That's that thinking that goes there. So they think, well, if we give them money and then they take care of them, that's the same thing. And it's not the same thing. You don't build needed infrastructure within a community when the dollars and the jobs are not there.
We're going to take our break now, and on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Dr. Pat McManus and what's happening with Milwaukee, and especially as it relates to the reduction of funds for the Black Health Coalition.